Welcome to the Season 5 of the India Energy Hour podcast. This podcast explores the most pressing hurdles and promising opportunities of India's energy transition through an in-depth discussion on policies, financial markets, social movements, and science. Your hosts for this episode are Shreya J., Delhi-based energy and climate journalist, and Dr. Sandeep Pai, Washington-based energy transition researcher and author. The show is produced by 101 Reporters, a pan-India network of grassroots reporters that produces original stories from rural India. If you like our podcast, please rate us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or the platform where you listen to our podcast. Your support will help us reach a larger audience. Climate crisis unfolding in India will first impact our plates. Farmlands, agri commodities, coastal areas are in 10 first line of impact from climate change-induced extreme weather conditions. Not only does it spike the cost of food, several researchers say it alters its taste and texture too. Close to 60% of India's population is dependent on farming as primary employment. Extreme weather is now playing a huge role in food inflation in India. To understand what is happening to our food givers and how the Indian economy can cope up, we talked with Sanjeeb Mukherjee, agriculture editor, Business Standard. Mukherjee has been a journalist for more than 2 decades and has been closely covering India's rural agriculture sector and the food economy. An incisive reporter, Mukherjee regularly travels across the country to understand the changes on the ground, innovations which are making our farmlands better, and what the other India outside our cities want.
Hello, Sanjeeb. Thank you so much for joining the new episode of India Energy Hour. We're absolutely delighted to have you. I've read many of your articles over the years, so it's truly a pleasure to have you come here and share your thoughts on some really important topics of the day. So thank you so much for joining.
Thank you, Sandeep, for having me in this show. And I also will have been very keenly looking forward to this. And hopefully, we'll have a very interesting discussion in the next hour or so. And
Right.
we'll be able to touch many of the topics that we want to discuss and take it up. Yeah.
Wonderful. So I think, as you may know, in our podcast, we first start with the guest, and and we spend some time, kind of 10-ish minutes, to understand about how the person got into the space. How did they get excited, interested in the topic? So let me start with that. That segment, which is. Basically, you have been a journalist for over 2 decades. What's been your journey like? You've seen so many changes within journalism. And specifically, how did you come about to focus on the agriculture sector, which is, at the heart of India's sort of like identity, if I can say. Let's just start with that, understanding your background, your entry into journalism, your work over the years, and finally your focus on agriculture.
Right. So as it's said many times that you chance upon things and sometimes you deliberately do things. So mine was a combination of both. So I didn't choose journalism as a profession, but it was the other way around. Journalism chose me as one of its as my profession in that sense. So I was happily doing a lot of things and happily preparing for as most people in my hometown do, for our professional life in management and IT background and with engineering, medical and other things. So I was also preparing to be a management grad, but then I was always interested in general knowledge, in general awareness and reading books and reading up newspapers, current affairs. I was very deeply interested in current affairs, which many people are. So, because when you prepare for civil services or when you prepare for competitive exams, and other way right also, I was always interested into current affairs, barring, except for the fact, outside the fact that preparing for any competitive exam. So as it has happened that I was happily doing my studies and preparing for examinations, but then I also got an opportunity to write in one of the local newspapers, and that was by chance because one of their guys had left and they were looking for filling a vacancy in the afternoon slot, which is the magazine section of a newspaper where you have to come in afternoon and you leave by evening, which is not the daily reporter's grind.
Right.
They had applied and sent this thing. So I thought, ki, why not? Because I was preparing in the morning hours. I used to have my tuitions, and evening hours I used to have other engagements. I thought, why not I invest my some amount of money, some amount of time in that? So it will help me in building something, and it will also meet my daily monthly expenses from for my growing up years. So in that way, I just chanced upon getting into that. So I just walked into a newspaper's office saying that I heard you had a vacancy. I am a rookie. This thing I don't know anything about this profession. I have written something. I am interested in current affairs. So if you find me eligible, I can. I am a candidate. So the editor there was like, no, it doesn't happen like that. Mr. I was a young guy that time. You just can't walk into somebody's office and ask for a job, and you have to come through a process. Have you applied for that? And so, no, I have got nothing. Do you have a CV? No, I don't have anything. I have never this thing, but I am interested. So he just gave me a paragraph to write or something. Why don't you write this thing? So I said, "ठीक है, I'll all write." So I wrote and I left it at his place and came back to my home. And then after some time, he gave me a call that, look, we don't have any vacancy there in the general reporting team. We don't. You are still this thing. Why don't you join as has been applied for in the magazine section? So that way I got interested. But I thought, okay, fair enough. It's a part-time thing. Let me go. But I am applying for my competitive exams as well. And maybe in the next 6, 7 months, my competitive results will come and I'll stop this. But then, as fate would have it, my competitive exams came. I cleared, but I the part which was a part-time job hooked on to me because I gradually realized that it was a thing which was to my liking. So I got an entry into a management college as well through a proper state-wise competitive exam. I even went through the grind of all the things, and then but then I took an admission. I did classes for 3, 4 months also, but then I realized that this is not my true calling. My true calling is still was the thing which was I was doing as a part-time job. So I told my family, my parents, that I don't want to continue with my management this thing. I want to continue with journalism. So obviously, as you know, in a middle class family, there are a lot of pushbacks from the parent side because they have a very set pattern of career growth. And most of the people there in small towns do have a set pattern of career growth. It's like, and the journalism when I started was not as widespread. It was well known, but it was not as widespread as it is now. The options were very limited. Television was just about coming up, and television was largely regional, national based. There was no websites or online media wasn't there. Newspapers and televisions were, and as I said, television was just coming up. So that is the way I got into what you call what is journalism. And then obviously my parents or my family insisted that if you want to continue with the profession in journalist, you have to do it in a proper manner. Don't just go into it. You have to take a degree. You have to take a. Then I applied for the journalism schools here, got into through them, and then I started working. Initial days were very tough in Delhi because that was the time when your .com boom was coming up, but is going bust kind of thing. The 2000, the Y2K thing, and around 99 2000, and all those small websites like Rediff and others were hiring people and also not hiring pushing out people. So there was some Hindustan Times had a website in those days which was hiring a lot of people, but they were all requiring. So the journey started like that. Gradually, then I moved to. I used to cover corporate reporting initially. Very initially, I used to do features. Then obviously,
Right.
I started with corporate reporting, companies, and other things. But then, as I said in the first part, fate, you choose something, or your fate chooses another thing for you. So it so happened that a job opportunity came for me in a small town. I have to go back. I had to go back to my hometown, which is Indore, Madhya Pradesh, and the opportunity was good, but the beat wasn't what I was doing in Delhi and other things. So they wanted me to do agriculture reporting, but their package was very good, and but they only had a vacancy for agriculture reporters. But they had to I had to move to Indore. So package was the one of the important factors in those that time. So I obviously said, okay, I'll do agriculture reporting. And when I was working in features also, I was slightly interested in development kind of stories. So I used to write for like bit of on Delhi. In those days, I don't know whether you guys remember or not. In those days, DTC buses were being phased out in Delhi, and there was a big controversy of DTC buses being phased out. They were being replaced by CNG buses during initial years of Sheila Dikshit or this thing. And there was this down to earth had run a full campaign against DTC buses, polluting DTC buses. Supreme Court took over. Then all of a sudden, one fine day, all DTC buses went off Delhi roads one morning. Everything stopped because there were not many CNG buses then. The CNG buses were just coming up, but the Supreme Court just clamped down and said, "Okay, stop DTC operation of DTC buses in Delhi." So we did features. I did features for Statesman in those days on how this was a kind of decision which is inspired by environmental concern, but has and there was chaos across the city in those days. I remember we walked some 5-7 kilometers in South Delhi to catch the first bus because buses went off and buses were dropping off people. So few days there was a lot of chaos across the city. And then gradually I obviously my career growth happened. I went back, as I said, I went back to Indore. I started agriculture reporting, and because they had a vacancy for agriculture reporting, and I generally liked agriculture reporting. So, and Indore is a very big place for soybean. It's an oil seed capital, right? Soybean is a very huge place, a huge crop there. So obviously, I used to go to mandis. I used to go to meet the farmers, the traders, and was working in a news wire in those days, where you used to file, you have to file stories at very quick pace. So from there, I got a chance to work in a foreign publication called Dow Jones. So Dow Jones used to have a wire setup in Delhi, in India in those days. Now it has been taken over by Wall Street Journal. So it's part of the Wall Street Journal group now. So Dow was a big break, and Dow wanted a people to cover commodities and from Bombay, because commodities market was booming in those days around 2004 onwards, 2003 4. For commodity markets were at a peak, so everything was very pricey. Those were the days pre post your lemon crisis of 2007 8. So I got a chance to work in Dow Jones. I went to Dow Jones Mumbai. I worked there. I used to cover commodities as well as shipping. So I used to go quite regularly to JNPT and other places. And JNPT is not that JNPT of today. So JNPT in those days, you have to get down at a certain point, to take a cab or go to a long place. JNPT was quite outside the city now in those days. It's still outside the city, but now I heard there are a lot of good connectivity to JNPT. So I used to every week I used to go to JNPT to get the ship data. So JNPT it still has. I don't know whether it is physical or online nowadays. In those days, they used to come out with a ship landing data commodity wise. So like if you have a oils or edible oil ship coming from say Malaysia, so they will give you the MV Vikranta or something 25,000 tons. So that has had an impact on the commodity markets. The used to have because if say 5 ships are coming of one commodity, and if you get hold of that information that next week 4 ships are being docked in JNPT, two coming, 3 containing palm oil and one containing soybean oil from say some buyer in Argentina or something. So you can those were market influencing information, and foreign wires are very hungry about such kind of information. So I used to get that every week. I used to travel all the way to JNPT, get that, file a story, and come back. So that was one of the experiences I had. Then gradually, obviously, then I left. I shifted to Delhi in Dow Jones. I worked in Dow Jones Delhi, where I covered the agriculture ministry as well as the steel. In those days, I used to cover, yeah, steel ministry. So that was my ministerial. Before that, also I in between I had joined UNI in Delhi also before
Right.
moving to Indore. So as I said, I had done corporate reporting, so I used to cover corporate beats in UNI, textile, and one more. I think one more was in UNI. So then I joined Indore. Then from Indore I went to Dow Jones Bombay. Dow Jones Bombay came to Dow Jones Mumbai, Delhi again to cover ministries. Then obviously I joined FE, and from there FE I came to BS, and then agriculture stuck on with me. I never left agriculture since Indore days. So it has been there always. So my beat never changed. My organization kept on changing. And in
Right.
BS I'm there for since 2011 onwards. And obviously I have traveled in BS to several of the places. I've traveled in FE also in many places. So these are small bits of what I have done so far. So as I said,
Right.
agriculture has always been part of me. And then over the years, obviously it is an interesting beat, because if you see, this is a beat which is ever changing, right? And agriculture always gives you stories, as people say, because there are a lot of things which keep on happening in agriculture. So more things change, more things remain the same in this beat. That beat. That's what my You can't say it's a very cryptic way of looking at things, but yes, it has been like that,
Right.
because there are certain fundamental issues with farming in India which never goes off.
Well, this is fascinating. So I just kind of nodding and acknowledging. This is
Okay.
such a enriching journey from, like just from a completely different field to landing into journalism. Then,
Yes.
I mean, one thing that I really appreciate in this is you have pretty much a very good ground up experience. A lot of people, who work on some topics usually start or sometimes start at the top, and they have a really good top down understanding. But I mean, what I appreciate is, like, you worked in Indore and you worked in, like, not Bombay, Delhi, but and then moved up and still go back and do that kind of reporting. So I think I think it shows in your writing. So I appreciate that. But I was curious about one question in this whole journey, and as you said, agriculture stuck with you. I'm just curious, just from a reporting point of view, what changes have you seen over the years? I mean, of course, agriculture is in transition. Some things remain same, others, like you said, are changing. So, but how has reporting itself? How do reporters look at agriculture as a sector has changed over time?
So, if you ask me from a very detached kind of thing, agriculture reporting over the years might not have changed much, because fundamentally, as I said, a lot of things in agriculture in India is still the same as it was when I started doing reporting, or maybe if I can say even before me, right? So one of the very important factors is that in Indian agriculture or Indian agriculture reporting, uh, the intervention of state is very deep rooted, right? In Indian agriculture, the state intervention is very deep rooted. It still remains the same. State hasn't pushed his hand out. Second, as you said, the importance of climate, importance of monsoon is still very important in Indian agriculture.
Right.
And that is primarily because your irrigation potential has grown, but not grown to the fullest extent. So these are certain things. And third, very fundamental thing, land sizes are very small. So any big decision or any big things has happened in agriculture, but not there are a lot of challenges in pushing them up. From the point of view of reporting, if you see, as I said, the state intervention remains very strong, very strong. When I did started reporting, or even before me, it still is very strong within the sector, the state intervention, the state role, the role of the government in pushing in or in making changes or incorporating certain things into the sector is still very strong. But yes, what has happened over the last years or decades is that gradually the reportage has become more farmer centric, which is very good. Earlier, many of the people who used to report, except for I won't say all of them, except for very few of them, they were very government reportage or very corporatized reportage. Now, a lot of people, a lot of young journalists I have seen, or if I when I go to meet people outside, or if you see the local reportage, local newspaper reporting, which always was very grounded in agriculture. The best agriculture reportage in India is done by the small local journalists because they actually have the feel for the ground. They know what is happening on ground, what impact the central policy is making on ground, what kind of change is happening on the ground because of that central intervention or the state intervention. So these guys were earlier very kind of very small or very localized. Now they have got a big platform through Twitter or what you call X now or Facebook. These guys are coming into limelight, and also from the national side or maybe from the state side, lot of this the concerns of the farmers and concerns on farming side or the farmers views are getting increasingly incorporated into reportage side also. It's not always the view from the top, it's also the
Right.
bottom, the view from the ground, which is coming into people's stories and people's understanding of agriculture, which should always have been the case. I am not sure whether it was there. It must have been there in local reportage. Local reporting is always very grounded. Hindi papers, if you see, language papers, if you see, their agriculture reporting is far ahead of what anybody else has done in this country. So if you see, there has to be there were a long time back, Statesman used to be very interesting and very important paper. So Statesman was one of the first to start a award on agriculture reporting, national award on agriculture reporting. And every time or maximum time, there was a paper called Hari Bhumi it's still there in Uttar Pradesh, and a paper called
Right.
Swadesh in Madhya Pradesh. These two are
Mhm.
papers who used to get those awards for rural reporting and agriculture reporting, because
Mm.
agriculture reporting is rural reporting, was deeply interlinked, right? Well, because agriculture is a very important part of the rural economy. So these are the papers, journalists from these two papers used to get the maximum awards in Statesman Rural Reporting Award. I'm not sure whether the award still exists or not. Maybe some
Right.
other, it is in some other form of that. So what I'm trying to say is that the overall reportage has improved from the point of view of incorporating the voice of the farmers. Secondly, obviously, the role of agri-tech companies, agri-tech as your in the last 10 7 years, digitization and digital properties have grown in all fields. Similarly in agriculture also, there are a lot of agri-tech companies, and people do report a lot of on agri-tech companies. There are specific websites who do stories purely on agri-tech companies. They do agri-tech companies also. And the third, and if you ask me, another problem is it's a very disorganized sector. No, it's a very individualistic
Right.
setup. Agriculture is not a very community-driven system in India. It's a very individualistic setup. And if you see FPOs and cooperatives, yes, they are, but they are a very small proportion of the total number of farmers they are. So the
Right.
collectivization efforts have been going on since independence, but and they have grown also in over the years. But the success stories, as you say, of collectives are very few and far between still now, at least in agriculture, this thing, right?
Right, right. No, fascinating. I have so many questions to it, which I could just spend time on agriculture and reporting. But let me move the focus to just the focus of the show, which is also climate change. So, first, I have two-part question. First part of the question is like agriculture as a beat obviously existed for a long time, but when did climate started coming in stories about linking agriculture with climate or impacts of climate on agriculture, etc. That's part one of the question. And how has that journey been? Is it much more reporting? Do you insert, not you specifically, but do journalists mostly, like in most of the agriculture story, you find some kind of climate lens? So what has been that journey? When did it start of bringing climate into agriculture? The second part of this question that I have is, has climate, because of this climate focus, has agriculture become a more glamorous beat? I mean, it has always been very important, but has it become more kind of mainstreamed or glamorous? So I'm just curious, before we get into like more substantive questions, I just wanted to understand the parameters.
So, as agriculture in report climate change in agriculture reporting, it was always there, but it has been there. Agriculture impact of climate change in agriculture has been felt for a pretty long time. I'm not saying there is any specific date. If I can remember, maybe post Green Revolution only things started moving towards the post, as everything 70s 80s impact have started feeling on of climate change in agriculture, this thing. But gradually over the years it has become more intense, and more people are also aware of impact of climate change, because your that what you call people, it is becoming very visible nowadays. Matlab, it is gradually, it is becoming very visible, the impact of climate change in agriculture. And reportage are also taking care of that. And there are a lot of as I said, there are a lot of independent news organizations, not the mainstream ones, outside the mainstream ones, who do very good work on impact of climate change on agriculture. Because there are people I know who have been working on climate change issues since long, and they have been focusing on agriculture as well. Means there are a lot of ground level NGOs who do such work, and there is a lot of this thing. But this awareness, we can't pinpoint a year when this transition started happening. Maybe post liberalization, things started moving more towards this, because people were getting more exposed to the new media which is coming up, and opening up also opened people to new vistas, new global the global news organizations, where they could get into this thing. But what I'm getting into, trying to observe, or what I've observed also, is that this gradually is becoming more pronounced. Earlier, maybe, if we can say, we had a crop failure, say maybe twice in a decade or thrice in a decade, because of climate change. Now, every year, every crop is getting impacted by climate change over
Right.
gradually. So this is where the transition is coming. Your government is becoming very aware. Government has become aware. The government was always, but has been aware, because there have been a lot of missions on making climate resilient agriculture practices. Your this thing, but now it has become much more urgent. It has become more intense on their face, kind of thing, that it is, because no season is going without an impact of climate change on agriculture. There's no season, there's not a single season which is going like that. So
Right.
and from that you have to develop your farming. And as I said, the challenges have grown, challenges haven't remained as they are. So if you see the growth rate of agriculture growth, long-term agriculture growth in India is hardly 4%, 5. The average is 3.5 to 4%, and this has been for say 3 decades, around three and a half decade. I don't know when it was below that. So if you see the long-term trend in agriculture, it is absolutely flat, right? But
Right.
the question is, the people dependent on agriculture, they have gone down, but not at the pace at which they should have been. So still 46% of our population is dependent on agriculture. But the growth rate hasn't moved a bit. The long-term growth rate has remained the same. On top of that, your new challenges come of facing the climate disturbance every year. So you have to produce from a reporting. This is just non outside the reporting. So if you have to produce it's a very academic kind of argument. You have to produce more from lesser amount of land with higher amount of people. So relatively, I'm saying relatively more people. So that is the challenge. And of course, reporting is reflecting that. Reporting earlier may not have been reflecting, as I said, the local journalists were doing, but they were also not very sensitized with what is the climate change part of it. It is a overall global phenomenon, or a phenomenon which is related to climate change. Now even the local journalists know it is Jalvayu Parivartan, as they call in Hindi. Jalvayu
Right.
Parivartan say he a lot of things are happening, because things are happening on ground very fast, very frequently, and very repeatedly. That's my this thing.
Right. For sure. Great. So, just one question, and then one short question, and then I want to. So, the first question I want to ask is like, why should we care about agriculture in India? And I'm asking this because we have a very global audience who may not have thought about it. So, if you can help establish the scale of what we're talking about, that'll be great. And then the second question I have on that is like 2024 was the hottest year on record, and you've been tracking this so closely. What impact did it have on Indian agriculture?
Okay. So why should we care about Indian agriculture? We should care about Indian agriculture because almost 50% of the country's population is still dependent directly or indirectly on this sector. Why should we care about Indian agriculture? We should care about Indian agriculture because still 17% of your GDP comes from this sector. Why should we care about Indian agriculture? Because we are one of the largest consumers of a lot of things, maybe food grains, edible oils, vegetables. We are a population of 140 million, so we consume a hell lot of things. We are also one of the largest producers of a lot of things. The largest producer of grains, one of the largest producer of sugar, largest producer of a lot of vegetables. But our domestic consumption is huge. We're a huge market, and we need to care about Indian agriculture because as I said earlier, because our land sizes are growing small, our resources are getting scarce, our population dependent on farming is going down, but our technologies or our productivity is not at par with the global standards. Our productivity of most of the crops, barring very few, I don't think there are any crop in India which is whose productivity matches the global level. That is why these are the 4 5 reasons why you need to care about Indian agriculture. We need to feed people. We can't be dependent, and we had a very bad experience of depending on global imports. So when India enters any import market, it imports huge. So if you are importing edible oil, we import almost more than half of what Malaysia produces. If you import edible oil, we import more than 40% of what Indonesia produces. We import 16 million, 13 million tons of edible oils annually. So these are the dynamics. When India starts importing, if India's agriculture is not self-sufficient or not self-dependent, or if it is, we should not, if it stop caring about Indian agriculture, these imports will grow manifold. And when imports grow, obviously your economy will dwindle like anything, because it is a big number. It will always be a big number. So we don't import in tons or two consignments or two shipments. No, we import in 50 shipments kind of things, because we are a big country. So
Right.
that is where we need to care about Indian agriculture, because that is where Indian agriculture should be on the forefront of many of the policy making decisions or discussions as such. The point number two is on your question on global on India 2024 being the hottest year. So
Yeah.
2024 was is the hottest year, but there have been precedences where years have been hot moments. These record is getting broken every year of being this thing. So I was talking to one of those environmentalists and meteorologists. They were saying that the target of 1.5 degree increase in temperature by 2100 is going to be met within next 50 years. It may be 2047 only your earth will go warmer by 1.5 degrees Celsius. I'm sorry, I'm slightly weak in this part. My colleague Shreya is a much more expert in this, but this is what it generally is. Now the question is, if your if your climate is getting hotter in in 2024, what impact it had? So if you see, around May, there was a sharp increase in temperature in India, right? And it touched almost 50 degrees. There was a phase of 50 degrees centigrade, days of 50, near 50-degree temperatures in North India. which was followed by very heavy rains, right? So what had happened is, I know May, June, or May, April, May are not very big agriculture months, but this created a very, means whatever milk production was going to happen, the lean season in milks came early. So lean season, because of the such a sharp rise in your milk in your heat temperatures, your even the winters were very warmer warmer last year. This year also winter is warmer. So what has happened is that production has impacted. Your milk production has gone down, though we have a stocks of skimmed milk powder which will keep us away from any point of importing. But there are a lot of crops which got impacted. Your onion production got impacted. Your which led to a spike in August September prices of onion. So this is a phenomenon which is happening every year. So year before that, what if you see, your summers are now no longer getting, it's starting early. So if 2024 was warmest year in Indian history, 2025 is also not good, because if you see this year, the year that we are currently in, we are already having a temperature. I was just looking at the IMD data today. So Safdarjung has recorded a maximum temperature. Safdarjung is a place in Delhi, has recorded a maximum temperature in last 24 hours till 5:30, which is 3.5 degree more than normal. And we are sitting in the month of January, end of January. Your summers have already come. Now, wheat is in the field, right? Wheat needs prolonged, not prolonged, but at least sizable amount of mist in the morning, and what you call fog, which settles down in the wheat crop, and it helps it to not break away. Otherwise, if the temperature rises during the pod for or your grain formation stage, grain breaks, and the wheat yields go down. So if what we are seeing today, if there is no change in temperature, which IMD has said there won't be any big change in temperature, because IMD this time has predicted a warmer than normal winter. Okay, so in December, January, February, so winters are warmer than normal. So your temperatures are
Right.
moving up. Your wheat crop is getting impacted. There is a lot of scare in the market, which is why your wheat crop will be impacted, which is why your wheat prices are not coming down below 3300, 3400 per quintal. Wheat prices are high because traders feel there will be a shortage of wheat, because this temperature is not very good. Point number one. Point number two, your mustard production is also getting impacted because of this. The temperatures have suddenly rising. If your mustard production goes up, your mustard goes down, your edible oil total domestic production will go down, and you will be again dependent on increasing your imports. You will depending on imports to feed your country. So your foreign exchange will go away. Your price will be controlled by someone from outside. Your will be determined by the global factors. So in every season and every year, there is a change in climate which is impacting the agriculture production. I think it's globally there. India, it is far more intense. As I said, the Indian challenges are very different from what it is, say, in European country or American country. Now, this year, why the temperatures are rising? As IMD has explained, because the La Nina, which was expected to set in the month of December, the La Nina never came. So the problem here is that La Nina has not come, and there is a possibility that by if La Nina does not come, by the time March, April, when that spring something happens, it might turn into El Nino. So from a good monsoon, last year was a very good monsoon year. We had surplus 8% surplus rain. Within 1 year, you are staring at a situation where you could have a deficient monsoon in 2025. I'm saying. So my question is, this is happening for a has been happening. I'm not saying this is happening for the first time, or I am only seeing it, or maybe some other person is seeing it. But this change or transition to me has become far more quicker and frequent nowadays, which is why your adaptation capability should be far more improved nowadays. You should not be sitting back and thinking, ठीक है एक साल तो production मिल गया, let's sleep over it. No, you can't do. And I think there is a understanding in the government about this. There is an understanding in the state ministries also about this. So what has the Ministry of Agriculture done? They have, which is again in what they have prepared a dashboard which gives you
Mhm.
real time feedback on where the crop condition and what is the moisture content. So this was always there. I'm not saying it's again. This was always there, but it was hidden somewhere in some department, some ministry, some IMD center, some IITM Pune. Some satellite would have been capturing this data and giving it to a crop weather watch group, which used to meet in once in a week to discuss. But now they have made it a real-time analysis of real-time monitoring of the crop situation, the crop condition, the heat stress, the what the groundwater level. These they have made it a dashboard in the minister's office, very monitors every year and takes corrective measures. As obviously agriculture, a lot of it is within the state domain. State has to understand. They also have their meetings every second day in a week. I think Tuesday they have now fixed Monday or Tuesday where they will meet to understand the condition of the crop. So I think there is a realization within the government that this is a thing which they should be looking at much more intently, and the impact is far bigger. Impact is much more deeper. Your fisheries, as we reported, your fishery production, inland fishery production is going down because of climate change. Your marine fishery production is going down because of climate change. You have to go more deeper into the sea because to get that amount of catch. So all these factors are there, but
Right.
when yield goes down in a country like India, where 86-85% of your farmers is small and marginal, with very limited source of income, the income of the farming community does not go up. And if the income of the farming community does not go up, your rural economies don't come up. And if rural economy does not go up, your sale of consumer durables, FMCG, tractor, two-wheelers, what you mobile phones all come down because rural is a substantial part of your consumption story. So
Right.
broader economics is this. So
Uh,
it has to
yeah.
be linked somewhere.
I just wanted to ask one question. This is really interesting. You covered several different, aspects of how it's impacted, and the different commodities are impacted. I just wanted to understand, like, what has been the cost implication? Like, is it possible to quantify what has been the increase, let's say in 2024, and how much inflation that caused or contributed? And I think I remember reading your piece about Indian thali getting costlier. So yeah, if you can shed any light on sort of
Yeah.
like the cost implication of that.
So if I remember, is the inflation means whatever inflation in pulses last year, which was 46-47%, was primarily because of the drop in tur production, tur and urad production, tur production largely. Tur production dropped because suddenly in Karnataka there were heavy rains during the harvesting time, which damaged the crop. So this is unseen. This is unexpected. So it is an impact of climate change. Karnataka tuor crop got damaged because of heavy rains, and which is why you started importing, and the prices moved up because your domestic crop got suffered. So if I can quantify, I don't know exactly. It would be difficult to say how much has been the inflation impact of climate change, but whatever impact of food inflation has been on crops like potatoes, I think tomatoes also were higher. So this is primarily because of climate change. All the price rises because of impact of weather on climate change, and this is very sudden. As I spoke to the IMD DG that day, he was saying it's very difficult to predict for us. Or even we don't know if the rains today. Say we have predicted some say 2 millimeter or 1.5 millimeters of rainfall in a certain area, then in a certain region, and there's one region where it falls 5 millimeters that day. So the because it is happening like that. So it's very difficult for us to predict also. But if you see the impact of food inflation, most of the food inflation or inflation impact is not because the supplies are inadequate. It's our crop area is inadequate. No, the most of the impact of the food inflation is because the yield I have is not, because every year if you see the acreage is growing. Acreage is
Right.
normal. Acreage is more than normal. So wheat acreage this time is 30 to 33 million hectares, which is more than normal. But the yield is not there because we don't know whether by March this temperature will touch 40. If it touches 40, then your crop is gone. What will you do with the area I create? So what I'm trying to say is that whatever inflation impact you are seeing in food crops or food inflation or your thali getting costlier is costly because compared to last year is primarily because of impact of climate change and crop harvest.
Right. Great. I mean, I think this is really interesting. It gives a really good perspective of what's the changes that are happening on the ground and how that has a ripple effect across the economy. Let's spend the last, segment on kind of the response of the government or other stakeholders. So, you started touching about like how there is more data monitoring, which is really positive. I mean, you need data to actually do anything, right? To measure impact will help with policy. So I'm wondering, like, how is the policy landscape changing with government? Are they investing more in early warning systems, crop insurance, and what else is happening from the government side to
Yes.
manage this changing, climate and its impact on agriculture?
Yes. So this is a very important question because impact of climate change on agriculture or rural industry or rural sector, much of it owners will lie on how the government responds to and what is the policy response to, because scientists are doing their job, economists are doing their job, your researchers are doing their job, but it is the government which has to act as a facilitator for all this, and government has to realize that there is no more time to sit. It is over. You have to have your climate resilient plan ready. Not only the plan ready, you have to implement on it on ground from today. There's no tomorrow for this. Tomorrow's time is over because you won't be able to feed your people for next 100 years if you don't start acting now. And the basis of this and the basic for this is start first, as I said, first realization within the government. Second, obviously using technology to monitor as they are doing. You get a real time feel of all the stuff, and then you have to act as a facilitator in the sense you have to have climate. And my only thesis in this, it's not mine. I whatever I have experienced and whatever I've spoken to people, whatever I understand from experts, is that you have to invest on research and technology. Research is your backbone through which you will have to fight climate change in agriculture. There is no other way. You can't have systems in place where you grow crop and then you plant a seed variety which is not resistant to heat, and then you let the loss happen because of heat wave. You have to have varieties, you have to have seeds, you have to have technologies which are resistant to climate change. So you have to have a rice which can withstand 30-40 days of lodging, as you call, completely submergence in water. And that rice variety should be available to every farmer in India, right? Okay. Because monsoons are not it won't happen that your rain is spread evenly across 3 months. There will be periods when it is raining heavily and your crop is lodged for 15 days, 20 days. There's neck deep water in the rice field. Your and that can happen at any point of any stage in your crop life cycle, maybe at the seed stage, at the just before harvesting stage when it is ready to harvest. You have to have seeds which can withstand that this thing. Or you can have also you have to have rice varieties which is grown in completely no water. So, like in eastern India, in Jharkhand, in Chhattisgarh, there were no monsoon till August this year. So, shall the farmer wait till August? Because if he starts planting his rice in August, he won't get a yield which is commensurate with what is the average yield is that. Because from September end, winter starts. If your monsoon period is shortened to just 2 months, so he won't get a yield which is equivalent to 4 months of monsoon or 3 months of monsoon rains. So he needs to have a seed variety which is withstand the dry weather. Now,
Right.
this is one part. So in every crop, you need to have seeds, you need to have technologies, need to do research, you need to do genome editing, you need you need to do all sorts of things. I'm not taking the name of the forbidden genetically modified, because yes, genetically
Right.
modified is a controversial subject. Let leave us apart. There are other technologies which has also come into the picture, which is this thing, and those seeds have to be developed. The research is going on. The research, but nobody is saying Indian researchers haven't built seeds, but their extension services should be there, should be much more robust, so that the farmer gets handhold of the. If you build a seed in your lab and then you said, "Ki boss, ये तो पहुंच जाएगा किसान farmer तक," no, it won't happen like that. The farmer has to get hold of that seed at a reasonable price in his doorstep. You do everything possible for that, because and you have to increase your research budget. You have to increase your research this thing. So there is a small bit of anecdotal evidence I can give. I can share. It's a very small this thing. So
Please, please.
India usually spends Indian state spending on Indian research is roughly around 10,000, 12,000 crores annually. A big multinational seed company, multinational agriculture sciences company, I won't name it because we don't take names here, and spends roughly 2 billion US dollars on just one crop research, this on developing climate resistant crop research in its labs. So this is where the difference lies. So you have to have investments in your research and technology. You have to have technologies. You have to have, and third and the most important part in that, you have to have mechanisms, insurance. Insurance is another thing which can save the farmer, which can give him some sort of risk awareness. So even if his crop fails, he gets a certain amount of money from that investment that he has made. So insurance is one part of fighting climate change. Your the technological innovations, like you don't do with that deep sea dredging, or you do some kind of other things to get the fish out of that, and your research investment on research. So these things have to move to fight climate change. There's no other way, because there's not, as I said, there's no time to wait. It's not waiting for anyone. Every week, every year, we are seeing some crop getting impacted by this, and this will go on happening.
Fantastic. I mean, I think R&D is a perennial problem in every different sectors in the Indian economy. Let me jump to the last and final question. And as a journalist, as a storyteller, would love to hear one or two stories about. We talked about how government is thinking about it, what needs to be done from the government side, but are there any stories from the field of people and farmers who are trying to adapt to climate change and managing it successfully on the ground? I know you travel a lot, so I wonder if you have one or two stories to share. That'd be a really fun ending to this really fantastic podcast.
I can share one a story. Of course, my experience is from BS only. So, as you know, as I said, drought reporting or reporting on low rainfall has been there since time immemorial, and I have also been part of few of them because of my long journey. And I have sometimes reported on lot on droughts in different places. So it so happened that BS once Business Standard once sent me to do a reporting on drought condition in Rajasthan, in one of those I think Junjunu Seeker area. So there were a lot of low rainfall. There was no monsoons there in that year, and something like that. So when I went to a village, it was near one of the roads which went to Churu. Churu, which is a very copper mining area, as a mineral area in Rajasthan. So it went to Churu, and I just got down and we went to a village. So the village was suffering a lot of water problems, right? So there was no water. It hadn't rained that year. In that. So farmers were complaining कि crop खराब हो गया, ये नहीं है, but there was not no. So I just went and interesting. I know it's not interesting. It's a reflection on the society that we live in. So I went to a village well. So there were two pipelines there. So two pipelines in that same well. And they used to have two wells. One well had dried up, and the second well, there are two pipelines. So I just asked them, "Ki, what is the two pipelines for?" So I know it's not an interesting thing. It's a very sad
Yeah.
reflection on on the society that we live in. So I was told that one uh, pipeline goes to the area where the where certain caste upper caste lives, and
Right.
the second pipeline goes to a place where the lower caste lives. So water had made them divide into two different castes. And I told them, what is the problem? The water is I just asked them, water is the same. Why don't you guys distribute among themselves? Like, no, because we are a certain caste, we get a priority in the 1 hour or 2 hour, two times the water used to come. So two times we get a priority, and because they are inferior caste, they get a lesser amount of water. So I'm not saying it's a very happy this thing. This is a reflection of the society we stay in. I put it across in my story as well. Okay,
Right.
the pipeline, the crisis of water has divided the village into two distinct castes, and there is a fight between the has brought forward this caste fracture in the society. So this is one small anecdotal. It's not anecdotal. It's the small realization I had and that water crisis was because of your climate change. Your climate change has
Right.
brought the caste fissure in the society out in the open. So people were reluctant to talk about the caste. They were saying, no, no, aisa nahi hai. It's no nothing. But then I spoke to some people. This is that part of the village where the lower caste people live, and they get a lesser proportion of the same because one well had dried up. So the only one well remained.
Okay. No, really fascinating how, the impact of climate change, but also general ongoing
My
issues with.
simple point of putting this point is that we talk about climate change in terms of very small binaries, in terms of very monetary impact कि इतना investment कम हो गया, इतना GDP कम हो गया, इतना inflation बढ़ गया. So just not inflation and investment. It actually is far more sociological problem because of your impact of climate change on rural areas and people who actually or feel that pain, which is not much captured in reportage, I suppose.
Yeah, no, fascinating story, and I'm sure there's hundreds and thousands of such stories because of this impact. I just wanted to thank you so much. This has been such a wide-ranging conversation, from your own personal journey to stories from the field to government policy. So I just wanted to thank you for your time.
Thanks, Sandeep. I also enjoyed my conversation with you. It was really fascinating to know the in-depth things that you guys do. Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much, sir. You weaved in so many sociology, everything. It was fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you for listening to the India Energy Hour. Subscribe to this channel to never miss an update. To drop us a feedback, visit our website or write to us at theindiaenergyhour@gmail.com. We are on Twitter. You can follow at TIEH_podcast and get in touch with the two hosts at Shreya_J and at Sandeep Pai.